This podcast is hosted by the Center for the Futures of Native Peoples at Dickinson College in Carlisle, Pennsylvania, USA, which is about a mile from the former grounds of the Carlisle Indian Industrial School. We are working to bring honest interpretations of the Carlisle Indian School that was in operation from 1879 until 1918. We honor the 7,800 Indigenous students from across the United States who came to Carlisle. The Indian School is a significant place of remembrance for our Native peoples. Because of the endurance, strength, and prayers from our people who went to the Carlisle Indian School, many of us are here today. Guwatsi relatives, welcome. It's another day of storytelling. It's a beautiful 31 degrees outside and it's snowing. It's the nice, fluffy snow, not really slippery, but it's such a beautiful day outside in Carlisle, Pennsylvania. And today is February 12th, and I'm here with a very special guest, Kate Theimer. How are you, Kate?
I'm doing great. Thank you.
Good. I'm so glad for you to come and share space and share story. One question I always love to ask at the beginning is share with us a fun fact about yourself that folks might not know about.
Oh, well, there are a lot of things about me that people don't know about. I have a very old Mini Cooper. I think it's like 20 years old. It's older than, I think, a lot of students on the Dickinson campus, and it has an incredibly low amount of miles on it. I'm going to drive it until it dies.
Nice. And what color is it?
It is bright blue. It is electric blue.
Is there a lot of space in there? I don't even think I've cruised in a Mini Cooper before.
There is absolutely not a lot of space.
Okay. Awesome. So your car's going to be in one of the car shows probably in a few decades, maybe here in Carlisle.
I think I'm eligible for a vintage car plate, license plate pretty soon.
That's cool. That's awesome. In light of knowing that you have a Mini Cooper, we'd love to hear more about who you are.
Sure. I should say I have no Native American ancestry. I grew up in the Finger Lakes in upstate New York. When I graduated from college, I wanted to be a museum person, like so many people do. And so I went to Washington, D.C., and eventually I got a job at the Smithsonian, and I got a master's in art history. And then I ended up in Ann Arbor, Michigan. So I went to the University of Michigan, and they did not have a museum studies program at that time. So I did what I thought was the next best thing, which is I went to the School of Information, and I have a master's degree in information with a specialization in archives, because the archives people sucked me in. And then I got a job at the National Archives after that, where I worked for some time until fate, in the form of Jim Gorenser, who you've had on the podcast before, brought me to Carlisle.
Okay. So I'm curious to know what got you interested in the field of archiving, museum type of work. Where's the spark? Where did that come from?
I like the stuff. I'm a stuff person. And so for the museum thing, I was interested in, decorative arts and furniture and all that kind of fancy stuff. But then over time, I got interested in a lot of other kinds of things. And that, as I said, the museum led to archives. And the field of archives is a fascinating one once you get into it.
Can you share what it was like to work with the Smithsonian?
Obviously, it's huge. And in my day, and from what I understand, it is still very sort of compartmentalized. So each museum has its own kind of thing going on, and I don't think they've yet succeeded in really sharing data and stuff seamlessly across museums. They're each their sort of little fiefdom or whatever. But it's fantastic. I mean, you're working with the best stuff in the world in many cases. So you can't complain about that.
Wow. So in light of, your experience and being here in Carlisle, for those who may not know, Kate, along with Jim, have been caretakers of our Indian stories. And that's why, I thought it was really important for you to come here and share a story. And I'm really curious to know, how did you get interested in learning more and doing research regarding the Carlisle Indian School?
Sure. Well, Jim and I are married, which plays into this story, obviously. I was doing other stuff related to archives when Jim started up the project, the Digital Resource Center project, and they had gotten the National Anthropological Archives at the Smithsonian had sent them scans of these glass plate negatives that they had. And at that time, Jim didn't have students available, because that's generally the kind of labor they have, to post them and to tag them and to do all that stuff. And I said, well, that's what I do. I'm an expert in tagging, not in the subject matter. So I said, well, I can do this for you because those glass plate negatives are just so gorgeous. And again, I have a degree in art history. I'm a visual person. So that was my gateway, was that particular set of photos. And from there, it just expanded on, well, I might as well do these other photos. So that's how I got sucked in.
Ah, okay. Around what year was that?
10 years ago.
Ah,
Ish.
okay.
Yeah.
Ah, I see. So thinking about like the Carlisle Indian School, we've talked since I've known you. I mean, I met Kate, I believe, in April of last year or May. April, yeah, I believe it was April at the symposium last year. And you do a lot of research regarding the Indian School photography, especially coming out of Carlisle. Can you share more about the photography that emerged from the school and share more about your interest in this particular area?
Sure, happy to do it. We could be here for a month.
All right, let's do it.
But we're not going to do that. I should say I am only, in as much as I'm an expert in anything, only an expert in the photographs of Carlisle. So I cannot speak to anything for any other schools. But photography at Carlisle, and I should put in a plug right now for the exhibit that will open on April 11th of this year, 2025, and will run through December here in the town of Carlisle at the Cumberland County Historical Society. And it is about photography at the Carlisle Indian School. So I'm going to follow the script that I've worked out for that show. I mean, in the beginning, even before the beginning, when Richard Henry Pratt, the founder of Carlisle, was working for Samuel Chapman Armstrong at Hampton, which he did for a year and a half, maybe 2 years. It was Armstrong who, when Pratt was going west to get a group of students, was saying, you have to get a picture of them in their, I'm going to quote this because I just looked at it the other day, so brace yourself. Make sure they have their wild, barbarous things, as he put it, because, again, this is for the before and after, right? They want to show where you've started. So even before Carlisle, Pratt had it in his head that this before and after, and of course, before and afters are a common trope that, it was not invented for the Indian schools. It's been around for ages. But, he took that from Hampton and from Armstrong. And so, again, the beginning of it was very much this documentation of, at the beginning, this is where we're starting. These are people upon arrival. And as you very well know, taking the afters, the transformation, that was really kind of to show their success in, again, in the terms that they were working under. And they distributed those photographs. Pratt has a chapter in his autobiography called Propaganda, which is a fascinating use of that term. I don't think he meant it negatively since he was talking about himself. So again, they were used for promotional purposes to show both the progress of the school and the, shall we say, in their terms, elevated state of the students.
So you've looked at thousands of photographs, and there's so many photographs available about the boarding school experiences. Which photographs resonate with you or stand out to you out of all those photographs? Like, what comes to mind when you think about the boarding school here in Carlisle?
Again, so for the exhibit, there are, and as we've discussed many times, there are different eras in the school. School changes over time. So I was having to pick for the exhibit different sort of images to sort of stand for that period of time. And so there are ones that are sort of either iconic, obviously in the before and afters. There aren't very many. It's hard to pick one of those. I think I've talked to you about the photo that was taken of a group of students in Choate's studio. John Nicholas Choate, the photographer who took pictures of Carlisle in the earlier days, up until about 1902 or so. There's a group of 4 male students who are posed with a framed photograph of someone, and it appears to be a female student. And just from the composition, we believe that that is a person who died. And based on, when those 4 guys entered and who entered with them and who would have been someone who have meant enough to them that they would have done this, we do think we know who it is. You cannot see the photograph of the person very clearly at all, but just based on those context clues, we think it's Fanny Charging Shield, who has been repatriated.
Aww.
So that's, to think of those 4 young men, because they were probably late teens, getting themselves together, getting the photograph of their friend, going down to the studio, and paying their own money, which they would have done, to have this basically memorial photograph taken is really pretty moving, I think.
Yeah, I agree. There have been many times where I've been with Kate and Jim, and they've helped me understand more about the context of why have these photographs were taken, and in the timing of it too. One thing that I share with our students, and one thing that Kate, you and Jim have helped me to understand, is looking at the Indian School, it's really important to see it as Pratt time and post-Pratt time. I think that's really helpful to look at it from 1879 to 1904 when Pratt was there, and then the post time, because the photographs evolve over that time for sure. And for me personally, the photographs that always stick out to me, of course, the group ones, the 1884 group photograph where there's over 300 of our Indian relatives right there on the lawn in front of Pratt's old quarters. That one is always the most stunning photograph to me because it just shows the generations of young people, our Indigenous youth and young adults that went there. That one always stands out to me. And there was one time where I was hanging out with Kate over at the Cumberland County Historical Society and going through the John Choate albums and photographs. And I really appreciated how you just had so much knowledge about the students that I was looking at. And especially the young people like Bruce Patterson, his photograph always stands out. If you don't know who that is, I encourage you to go to the Carlisle Indian School Digital Resource Center and look up Bruce Patterson. Or White Buffalo. Can you share a little bit more about White Buffalo?
White Buffalo.
Yeah.
White Buffalo had prematurely white hair when he arrived. And so we can always find him in a group because he's the one with the white hair. And again, he was a before and after subject. And that's about all I have on White Buffalo.
Yeah.
But he's very distinctive. Well, and actually, if Jim were here, Jim would tell you the whole. I think there's a long story about things that happened to White Buffalo after he left. But you'll have to look that up on the site.
What, in your opinion, your perspective, what is the impact of the boarding school photography?
I mean, the impact of it at the time, obviously, is that it helped promote the school widely. And we haven't even talked about football because, that was enormous. So inconceivably important to the history of the school at that time was the promotion of the school through football. But the impact of it today, at least the impact of the Carlisle photography, I am pretty sure that Carlisle has the most photographs of any boarding school. I think that's, undeniable. There are thousands. So it helps I think Carlisle would not be remembered today the way it is if it weren't for the photographs, because the photographs allow, as you very well know, the connection, looking at faces, looking at that, we call it the sea of faces, the one with everybody in front of the superintendent's house. So being able to see faces, to make that kind of connection, to attempt to understand what things were like for people then, that is an enormous impact. And for a long time, those photographs were really all that most people had because the student records, the actual records, were at the National Archives and could not be accessed for privacy reasons. But those photographs were around and widely distributed and widely available. So for a lot of people, for a long time, and still, that's all they know. I mean, to them, Carlisle is a photograph or two photographs. And that's great that we have something. But I also do think that it's really important for us now to move beyond that limited set of photographs that most people know, which is what I'm doing with the exhibit and with what I do in general. Because as you've seen, Mandy, there are so many pictures of people later on taken themselves with their own cameras, goofing around, not in that constrained way that the students in the first group of photographs look. So it's helping make connections in different ways to these people as much as we can have any connection with people at the past, as fully rounded people who had a variety of experiences and emotions. And also, in addition to connection, clearly there's documentation. The photographs capture a moment in time. We don't know what happened before and after that shutter snapped, but we do know what was happening in front of the camera at that time. And we were just talking about ice skating before we started recording because, it's cold. And they ice skated. We know they ice skated. There's a lot of discussion in the school newspapers about ice skating. And you could say, well, maybe that didn't really happen. But there are photographs of them ice skating. They did. They skated. And, we have photographs of other things that are happening, and they tell you, you can't depend on them for the entire story, but they give you a window, right? I mean, they give you a slice of that kind of documentation about what things happened and the way things looked.
As you were sharing more about the exhibit that's coming up, I learned about John Leslie, who is a student at the Indian School. Can you share more about John?
Yeah, John Leslie came to the school, I think he was about 21 when he arrived in 1895, I'm going to say. This is terrible. I'm awful with dates. But so he was at the school for, I think, like 3 or 4 years. He did graduate, and he left quite soon after he graduated. But as soon as he came, he was working in Choate's, again, the professional photographer. He was working in Choate's studio. And he is the only student photographer that we know of. We know other people took pictures. Leslie, we have pictures with his name stamped on the back. It says John Leslie, photographer. So he was taking it to a whole nother level. And we know that photographs that Leslie took were reproduced in the school newspapers and were reproduced in one of the souvenir booklets. So he was recognized by the school as, I believe they call him, our Indian photographer at one point or another. And so the photos that he took, and I've now identified, I think, about 25 of them, which is more than we used to know about. He's taking pictures of his friends. I mean, I try not to read too much into the photographs, but you can, about people's postures, about how people are standing. People stand very differently when it's a friend taking the picture or when you're in a photo studio where you're standing up straight. And there's one fantastic one, which will be in the exhibit, and I know I've showed this to you, Mandy, where John Leslie was taking pictures of the interior of the superintendent's house. And, you're sort of going along. It's like, okay, here's this room, here's this room, here's this room. And there in the back are Mr. and Mrs. Pratt. Mrs. Pratt is sitting in a chair. And Pratt, the puffed up Pratt, the egotist that is Pratt, is lying on a sofa and he has a newspaper and it kind of looks like he's asleep. It looks like Leslie caught him napping. And that photo would not have been printed if Pratt didn't approve. So Pratt was fine with, he was on the kind of terms with Leslie where Leslie was in his house taking pictures in an informal setting, which, really says quite a bit about that.
Yeah, I wanted to just take time in this space to honor John Leslie, because a lot of times, right, like our Indigenous people weren't always the photographers, didn't always have the opportunity to share stories their way. So I thought learning about John, I think was really neat, and just, that he did have the opportunity. And with Choate, I'm really curious to know your perspective. What do you think about Choate's photography? How do you conceptualize when you look at his photographs? What do you think about it when you see his art?
I think he was a good photographer. My background is not in photography, but I think they're good pictures technically. I think they evoke the sitters as much as the time period would allow. Again, I always remind people we're talking about late 19th century. It's more of a Victorian period, so people were more formal, which is why it's fascinating whenever you get a picture that is less formal, because you're like, wow, that's a big deal. There's one that's going to be in the exhibit. I think you've shown this one, Mandy, with a female student with her hair down and loose, which you never see. It's not just something that would have been unusual for the Indian school students, but it would have been unusual for any young woman at that time. My understanding is that's much more of what you do when you're with a family group, and she is, because it's a photo of her with family members. I would guess they probably took that in order to send it back to family members, because that's another thing that the photographs were doing. They were being sent back and forth between family members.
Yeah, I agree. I think John Choate is an excellent photographer, how he shared stories, because the photographs he took are so compelling. And I'm a photographer in my own right. I'm not a professional photographer. I just like taking pictures. But I've looked and I studied the poses too. That's really important. And even the group photographs. I've done shot a couple weddings here and there, photographed weddings. And in my opinion, the hardest photographs to capture are the ones after the wedding, typically with the large all family photos, where, there's the couple's families and it's usually tons and tons of people. And to me personally, those large photographs are really hard to capture. And that's just my perspective, doing wedding photography. But I look at those pictures that he photographed of our young Indian people that had hundreds of people in them. And I think about the surveillance of these young Indian people that they were under, for them to sit still, for him to capture the photographs. His photographs will stand the test of time as long as we got the internet. It's really compelling in how he shared story.
Well, I mean, can you imagine how many outtakes there were? For every one where he got everybody to sit still enough, There must have been so many where somebody moved. So yeah, I mean, we're seeing the ones that the ones that survived.
So true. I didn't even think about that. Because we are seeing the ones that survived, and the ones I believe are there 12 before and after photograph sets? Okay,
yeah, about that.
Okay.
Depending on how you count, but yeah, around 12.
Okay,
that were used for sort of publicity purposes. Yeah.
Interesting. Oh my gosh, it's this. We could talk, like you said, we could talk
we could be here all day.
Yeah, we could. So in light, Kate, of processing all of this and your work and your research here in Carlisle, how do you personally process being in Carlisle, living here? You've been here for how many years?
15, maybe.
Okay. So how do you process being here in Carlisle?
Oh, well, it's a very different experience for me than it is for you, obviously. And through my work with Carlisle, I think about Carlisle, when I say Carlisle, I mean the school, in two different ways. And Jim might have also talked about this, that there's Carlisle as symbol. When people talk about Carlisle, about the Carlisle Indian School, it often is symbolic of the entire boarding school system, sometimes in this country and in Canada as well. Carlisle bears the weight of all that. And when you think about it in those terms, it's incredibly heavy. I mean, you talk about this all the time, that, there's sort of Carlisle in that way. But as you know, for me, for Jim, and for other people, when we're in the minutia of Carlisle, we're in the tiniest little details. And it's a completely different way of thinking about it as a complex organization that had so many people working there, living there, being associated with it. And from day to day, things were changing. We're always finding new. You read one letter. We were just talking to somebody who's doing some, not transcription, but reading things and summarizing them to put on the web. And she was saying, I could do this for the rest of my life. It is so interesting. Every page, you find something new. And so in that way, Carlisle, for me, is this incredibly complex, historically important, yes, but being able to try to look at all of these people as individuals, as people who were living their lives and going from moment to moment, and anything that we can help surface, things like photographs of individual people, if we're able to give names to those, it's so satisfying. But just being able to really talk about the details about, we can't know what life was really like. There's no way we can know that, but we can know some aspects of probably what happened on a daily basis. That's the best that we can do. And so for me, just being able to it's like raise the Titanic or something. You're pulling this up and taking a look at it.
Gosh, I just respect you, Kate, and honor you because you, as you mentioned, you're taking care of our narratives of our Indian people. And that is so important because for descendants like me and other folks within our Indigenous communities, it's helping us to, well, one, find our relatives and find our tribal peoples in these archives because there is so much documentation. And the work that you've done and many other caretakers here really does directly impact our Indigenous communities in really profound and powerful ways. So I just honor you, Kate, for that. I also want to recognize too, like you were mentioning even the word Carlisle, and I've mentioned this in other spaces too. Before I moved to Carlisle, the term, the word was always directly pointed to the Indian school, always. And I mean, there was in Albuquerque, there's a road Carlisle, actually. And so I knew that too, like in Albuquerque, there's actually a road named Carlisle. But coming here, like it was from the very beginning, Carlisle, the term was synonymous with just the school. And as I've lived here now since May of 2024, now Carlisle is unraveling the word, where it's Carlisle, the Indian School, and Carlisle, the town, and Carlisle, the people that live here now. And it's not as deeply connected just to the Indian School because now my experiences are really understanding beyond the Indian School what it's like to be here in Carlisle. So I just appreciate your perspective, Kate. And I wanted to ask you, too, if you can share more. You have your own podcast, and can you share more about your own podcast and where we can find it?
Oh, my podcast. I was really good about a podcast for a while, but as you know, podcast is a lot of work. So it's, as I say, it's on hiatus. You can find it on anywhere you get your podcasts. It's the Carlisle Indian School Research podcast, and I have every intention of bringing it back, reviving it, but I need to get back to doing it a bit more informally, because if I stop to think too much, I freeze and I won't say anything because I'm afraid of, it's unscripted for the most part. So I'm always afraid that I'm going to say something that's out of context, not appropriate. But I do think I've gotten a lot of positive feedback on it. And there is so much information that, as you know, just you can tell one story. I try to avoid saying I'm telling stories because I'm just, it's not my story to tell, but I can share what I learned today. This is an amazing document, or this is a photograph, or, this is when we made this connection between this document and this photograph. So I do have every intention of bringing back the Carlisle Indian School Research podcast. Look for it on all of your places where you get podcasts. Thank you for mentioning it.
Yes, the episodes that are there are so informative. And recently, within the last couple of months, the National Park Service has come to Carlisle and come to Dickinson. And I remember one of the folks from there was mentioning listening to your podcast. So the reach is far, and it's helpful because it gives those technical aspects of what the Indian school was like from those primary sources. And so I really appreciate that, especially trying to understand how the Indian school came into formation. That's still something I really sort through. And I feel like your podcast has given me a lot of insight to before Carlisle was even established. So kudos to you.
Thank you. And we need to get back to that because, again, we've learned, that's the thing. It's like we've learned so much since I was doing those. And yeah, I think Jim and I have a lot to say about pre-Carlisle. We're not experts, but we've been paying attention to seeing how Carlisle came about.
Can you share a little bit more about, in terms of the archives at the Cumberland County Historical Society has, I think, the largest repository of Carlisle Indian School photographs, documents, objects. Can you share what's available there for those who are interested to visit the Historical Society?
Sure. As we've done with the stuff at the National Archives, and as we're doing with other repositories, we are trying to scan everything and make everything available in the Digital Resource Center, just because we want to make sure that, as we always say, no one has to go to Washington, D.C. to find information about their ancestors. And similarly, not that we don't want people to be coming to the town of Carlisle. Of course we do. Everyone's welcome. But, it's expensive and some people can't travel. So we are working to get everything online. If you do come, in addition to the temporary exhibit, which will be up this year, we're going to redo, there's one gallery, one museum, permanent museum gallery, which we will be redoing this spring to make it reflect more of our current scholarship. So there is that. There is the opportunity there to look at original photographs, which is interesting. As archivists, we always know that for some people, and I think you're one of those people, Mandy, to actually hold an original object is an extra experience that looking at it does not convey.
There is nothing like it.
She is nodding up and down.
Yeah, I am. There is nothing like it when you are able to hold the photographs and hold the objects. Oh my gosh, it is it can be, gosh, it just evokes so many emotions like grief and sadness, but also joy and celebration, because I always think about the endurance of our people and the joy that our people, I don't know. Yeah, it's a very, in my opinion, very emotional experience and can be. And every time I go to the Historical Society, I always learn something new. And I love going with people because I like to hear how people are also conceptualizing what they're seeing or what they're holding. And so I really encourage folks that are able to come to Carlisle and go to the Historical Society to interact with the elements from the Carlisle Indian School.
Yeah, the photographs are the big thing there. There are some drawings, some student artwork that are also really interesting, and I think we're going to try to have reproductions of those available. because as an archivist, I must point out that handling of original objects is something that in general should be avoided because they're fragile. So it's a wonderful thing to do, but in some cases we're going to be trying to have reproductions as well, just so that you can see the content without. That's my required archival content, that originals are fragile. And one fantastic thing that's going to be happening very soon, in fact, after this podcast, I'm going to a location where we have another huge collection of photographs that we are working to get online. And they are things that basically nobody has seen before. So, there's a thrill in getting that stuff up.
Can I come? Just kidding. I want to see those photographs.
I should say another thing that we're going to be doing that listeners might be interested in is, I don't know when we're going to be able to get that up, probably later this year, is a gallery of unidentified people.
Oh.
So as you know, we have many photographs in which we know who the sitters are, but we have many photographs in which we do not. So I'm going to make a specific gallery or collection where people can go through and help us identify. I mean, even if you can tell us what from their clothing or their accessories, if you can say, well, that is, that person was probably from such and such a place, it gets us a little bit closer. But I would be surprised if we didn't get some people who said, that's my relative.
Wow.
So I think that's going to be really interesting and important. And we're looking forward to being able to get that out there and get some more information.
Gosh, yeah, I can already envision. I would put that on TikTok and be like, do you recognize any of these people? Yeah, the unidentified. Oh, my heart. Oh, our Indian people. So, Kate, as we finish up our story time here, is there anything else you'd like to share?
I would like to share how much that we all appreciate you, Mandy,
Aww.
Here in the town of Carlisle. You've made a huge impact, as I'm sure you know, but maybe you don't even know how big an impact you've made. Everybody who meets you thinks you are delightful. You have charmed a lot of people, which can be an important aspect in getting things done. But yeah, and the center's an important new part of our community here. We often tell people that we're a tight-knit little group here in Carlisle, as I think you've seen, Mandy. I mean, the people who work on the Indian School who live here, we all know each other. We're all one team, one group working together for the same purposes. And we're very, very happy to have been able to welcome you into our little virtual family here in Carlisle.
Oh, Dwight, thank you so much. I'm one of those charming Indians. I'm taking my spot here in Carlisle.
Yeah, I'm sorry. That might have sounded a little weird, but you know what I mean. I think you know exactly what I mean, because I think you know when you're doing it.
Our Indians are just charming. Well, Dwight, thank you so much, Kate. I really just thank you for helping me to acclimate here to Carlisle, to be a friend when I need one.
That's right.
This place, as many know, is quite the place to live and to experience. So I thank you, and I, of course, thank Jim, too, for helping me to be a part of the community here and navigating this place.
It's our pleasure.
Oh, well, thanks everyone for listening. Dawai, I say to you, hush jamegume, keep the strength, keep the endurance. Thank you so much, Kate, for being here, and I hope everyone has a wonderful day. Take care. A special thank you to Alex Kluge for editing this podcast episode. Alex is one of our CFNP undergraduate student advisory fellows. I greatly appreciate you and all your willingness to help us at the center. We love you, Alex. Dawai, thank you so much, Kate, for sharing stories with me today. And thank you for being a caretaker for all these years and taking care of our Indigenous narratives here in Carlisle. I appreciate you and Jim so much for mentoring me and teaching me more about my relatives at the Carlisle Indian School. I'm really thankful for you and Jim, who've really helped me to acclimate living here in Carlisle. Many thanks to Brenda Landis for teaching me the technical process of producing a podcast. Learn more about the Center for the Futures of Native Peoples at dickinson.edu/CFNP. Follow us on TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, and X at CFNP Dickinson. Learn more about the Carlisle Indian Industrial School at the Carlisle Indian School Digital Resource Center at carlisleiindian.dickinson.edu. And I really encourage you to go to the site and look up the photographs that Kate and I had mentioned here in this podcast. Authenticity is important. You can learn more about me at amandachermiah.com, and you spell my last name CHEROMIAH. You can also connect with me at drchermiah on TikTok, Instagram, X, and LinkedIn. You can also email me at CHEROMIA@dickinson.edu. I honor my relatives who I know of so far that came to the Carlisle Indian School. Because of them, I am here. And in the words of Chief Philip Whiteman Jr., who is Northern Cheyenne and a descendant from the Carlisle Indian Industrial School, he says, "I love you and there is nothing you can do about it." Hashtamegume, do I thank you so much, relatives, for listening. Until next time.